Hi, my name is David
Hi.
from LabStar Software, and I'm joined today by Amber from Detroit Dental Design. And today we're going to talk about what second generation lab owners look for in dental lab software. So tell me a little bit about your lab, Amber. Um, how many people are in your lab and kind of what type of work do you guys do?
Thanks, David. Thanks for interviewing me. Um, so, we are a Crown and Bridge restorative dentistry lab. We do not do any removables here. So, everything's basically porcelain fused to metal restorations, full contour zirconia, Emax, and pretty much any type of implant, abutment, custom abutments, stock abutments that you can think of. So everything that we do is fixed. There are 9 of us here in total. So we're a smaller lab, but we were even smaller still a few years ago. So we're we're looking to grow maybe to about 10 to 12 people total. That's really kind of where we like to stay.
Awesome. And how old were you when you kind of took over the lab, or was it like right after high school you jumped in, or was it kind of a later transition for you? Don't have
So
to
it
give
was
a
kind of a
specific age if you
process.
don't want to.
It's okay. It's all right. So I was 36 years young when I
Okay.
took over the lab. Um, and it definitely was not something that I thought that I would do early on. And I worked here when I was younger in high school, and mostly did model work and scheduling and some of the clerical types of tasks in the lab. And I really thought it was kind of boring. I really did not enjoy the idea of not interacting with like a bunch of different people. And I felt like, oh, I would like to work in a field where I would get more exposure to, the public or customers or consumers. So it was not something that I was dreaming of doing.
Okay, so what kind of made you change your mind then? Or kind of, was there something specific or?
Yeah, there were a few things. So originally, I went to college and got my license as a dental hygienist, and I started working in that field and loved it. So it was still in dentistry, but so much more suited to my extrovert personality. So I did that for several years, and then a friend of mine convinced me to get into dental sales. So I started doing that in the Midwest and traveling, and I really liked that as well. That then turned into working for a company in a sales consulting role, doing some business development and business development management in the Northeast part of the United States. And I really loved that role. I loved that career. And ironically, my role was working for a digital dental laboratory.
Okay.
So without really meaning to or seeking it out, I ended up back in the lab industry. Um, and started to become really interested in the internal workings of what was happening in the lab. At the time it was in Texas. And so here I was doing all the sales and marketing and recruitment of new customers and product education. And I found myself more interested in the manufacturing, how it all came together, and how they were producing products that could be consistent and standardized. And as the customer advocate, I had to get really involved in that process. So communicating with the lab internally and saying, hey, there was a lack of consistency in some of the products that were produced recently. Can we talk about why that might be? Can we understand how we can solve that moving forward? And so it really happened organically. I just found myself several years ago thinking, hey, I thought I didn't really want to get into lab, and here it is. I'm involved in it, not in my family business, but in an outside entity. So that really kind of sparked that idea of, hey, maybe it is something that I'd be interested in doing long term.
And something that you could be good at with that knowledge.
Right. And I think having been able to spend my 20s and 30s out working with customers and patients and interfacing with people, I loved it. I still enjoyed that piece of it, but it's not all amazing all the time. So sometimes it is nice to be able to come to a workplace and see the same people, develop a team, work in a more introverted type of an environment and have a little more control over what happens and processes and relationships and things like that. So I'm enjoying that.
Totally. And when you took over the lab, did you implement any changes in technology, software to run the lab?
So a big piece of what I wanted to do was move the lab in a more cloud-based or digital direction. We already had some of my other family members, my brother mainly, doing a lot of designing, and he had pushed the lab in that direction initially towards getting it to that point where we were able to do a lot of CAD design and we were able to do a lot of different digital workflows that we didn't have before, but it was still being managed very manually. So, just going through the lab, looking at return dates on the pans, and then organizing work based on when it needed to be back in the dental offices. And I really wanted to find a solution that could be more automated, that could minimize the amount of time that people spend looking for cases, that would be able to help us standardize more of our processes. So we needed to find a software platform that could manage that instead of relying on people, and trying to gauge how successful and efficient we are just by how we feel or how the work is coming in. So I wanted to find something that would just standardize all of that.
Awesome. How did your lab staff adjust to kind of those new changes that you brought in? Was it met like, great, here's a new way of doing it? Or was it kind of, we want to do things the old way? Or was it kind of easy, hard?
No, I think any change for anyone in any way is always difficult. And so finding a way to build value for that was really key, to say, okay, here's why this type of a platform really can benefit you or impact your workflow in a positive way, versus, hey, we're doing this, it has to happen because this is what I said. It's like, how can we help benchmark your productivity and then set goals that will result in benefits for you in the future if your productivity increases?
Yeah, more than just do this because I say so.
Right. I mean, I think, definitely that's not a role that I like to play anyways. So it was an adjustment for me to say, look, this is what I really want to do. Here are the reasons why, and we all have to participate or it won't be successful.
And I know your brothers work in the lab, right? Is it, how many brothers in the lab?
Just one. There's just
one.
myself and.
Okay, sorry.
Right.
Was there any adjustment? Like, did family adjust to the changes better than employees, or?
I would say probably. I don't think there was a huge difference, but I do think going back to that the digital piece where my brother was already really on board with that. So this was exciting. This is like exciting because it's like, okay, we can have all of the information that we need in one place. We can upload our photos. It can all be, it's a dynamic platform. So it's something that we can go to regularly and it has all the information in one place. And so we're not going through filing cabinets or we lost the photo or we sent it back to the practice or whatever the situation might be. So that is something that was really exciting for him. And so I would say maybe made it easier because he already was thinking digitally.
Yeah, you guys were on the same page. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Any other just kind of general advice you'd give to a second generation lab owner in implementing new technology or looking for new technology?
I think probably my biggest struggle in being a second generation lab owner is that, my dad and I didn't necessarily share the same vision for where the lab would go, what direction it would be going in. And I would expect that that would be something that most people would deal with because, my dad knew one way of doing, running the lab, making restorations, and doing the business with the customers that he had. So I think that was really important that he and I were able to find a way to have a similar vision and put some workflows in place to move towards that vision. Without him agreeing to be a little more digital, to embrace some of the technology, I think it would have been really challenging. And I see that even with some of the customers that we interface with. So a lot of the customers that he had, he being 30, 40 years older than I am, they are used to a certain way of doing things. So sometimes I think bringing the customer around and educating them on that is really important, because
piece of the puzzle.
Yes, it is. That was something that I kind of underestimated, the impact of making sure that my dad and I were aligned, and hey, this is the way the laboratory is going to be moving, and then helping our customers get to that point as well by utilizing my dad's relationship and the experience that he had built with those customers. And I don't believe that it would have been successful if he couldn't have been able to get on board with that. I think he would have been resistant to the technology. Therefore, he would not have been able to effectively communicate with the customers that this is the way we wanted to start moving.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Amber, and best of luck at your lab.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
Take care.